Welcome to Black Philanthropy, Our Stories, where each episode spotlights awesome Black and African American leaders committed to transforming lives and communities through philanthropy. These authentic conversations will inspire, challenge, and remind you you are not alone. Here's your host, award-winning writer, director, and founder of Simuel and Murray, Michelle Renee Jackson.
Hello there. My name is Michelle Renee Jackson. I am so grateful for you. If I can just explicitly say that I express gratitude for you. Thank you for trusting me with your time and my time together. I do not take this time lightly, and I know there are other options, other podcasts, other ways to take lunch breaks, other ways to be in the gym, but that you choose to listen today together means a great deal to me. And I will say that I have recorded this episode or attempted to record this first episode a multitude of times on different days during different lunch breaks and different meetings that I have throughout the day. And I thought I was finished. I thought I had a full first episode recorded. And then my father passed away last Tuesday. So today is Wednesday. I'm going to check the date. The date is May the 29th, and my father died on May 20th. And it's interesting because I have, at this point, by May 29th, have recorded with other guests about 12 episodes, and we're just all waiting for me to do this first episode. And I thought that I was just in the process of editing the first episode. And then when my father passed away, I realized that I made a mistake. And the mistake that I made is that I misunderstood what Black Philanthropy, Our Stories, is ultimately about. And I was talking to Tony Simmons last week about his episode upcoming. And one of the things that he reminded me, as many of our other guests reminded me, is that Black philanthropy is ultimately about Black people supporting one another. African Americans in this country, those of us who descend from enslaved people, of which I include myself as one of those individuals, the only way that we've been able to get to this point from slavery to this point in 2025 is through supporting one another. It is through what many of us would identify as Black philanthropy, Black people supporting one another. And even though I heard that perspective with many of our guests many times. Black people were not new to the game. The idea of philanthropy may be new to the world, but it's not new to us, is what I've heard and what I did believe, have believed. But my entry point into philanthropy has always been at the institutional level, which is to say it has been through nonprofits, it has been through endowments, it has been through raising money as a fundraiser, as a major gifts officer for certain institutions. And I have always traditionally thought of philanthropy in terms of, capital P, big institution, big money, and predominantly in white spaces. And one of the reasons why I have started this podcast, Black Philanthropy, Our Stories, was because I wanted to provide a space for leaders, Black leaders within philanthropy to tell their story. Because throughout my career, since 2011 in philanthropy, I didn't know many Black leaders in philanthropy. And I thought, well, we should do something about that. I'm a storyteller. Let's do something about that and create a space for that. So I've been listening to guests talk about their journeys into philanthropy as Black people. And I have heard this reminder of, but Michelle, Black philanthropy, that is what we do. It is part of our culture. It's part of our DNA, is to support one another. And I thought, yeah. But I come into this space through, being a fundraiser, through planned giving, through endowment management, things like that. And then my father, he passed away last Tuesday, again, May 20th. And I realized that I had overlooked the ways in which my father has been a philanthropist, a Black philanthropist. And I thought it would be irresponsible for me to continue on with this podcast, which he will not hear currently, but I will, when I get a chance, send it to him when I see him again. And I thought it would be a mistake. Let me back up. If I continued on this journey of philanthropy, for me is predominantly institutional. That's how I enter into it, was what I've been saying for the last 10 years. I enter into philanthropy through planned giving and institutional money. And I didn't acknowledge my father's example of philanthropy through his body, through his hands, through his heart, through his money. Then that would have been of irresponsible. It would have been a failure, and it just would have been inaccurate. So I say all of that because I wanted to dedicate this first episode to my dad, Solomon Neal Jackson III, who was born on November 28th, 1958, and who isn't here anymore as of May 20th, 2025. I'll just say a couple of things about myself, and then I'll talk a little bit about my dad, and then I'll talk a little bit about my own entry into philanthropy, which is to say, my name is Michelle Renee Jackson, as I said from the beginning, and I often will tell people that my last name is Jackson because I am a Jackson, but our company, our production company that I am the founder of, the principal artist of, is Simuel and Murray. And I named our company Simuel and Murray because I wanted to honor my grandmother's maiden names. So in the case of my mother, we come from Mildred Simuel Ardenstead. And then in the case of my father, we come from Louise Murray Jackson. And I thought it was important, even in the naming of our company that tells a story, that we honor the women, in particular the Black women that we come from, amazing Black women like Mildred Simuel Armistead and Louise Murray Jackson, women who were born into Jim Crow in the South, who were single moms, who were extraordinary, who created my mother, Valley Jackson, who created my father, Solomon Neal Jackson. Just two amazing Black people that I'm so proud to be their daughter. I have two sisters, Denise and Shantae. I'm the youngest of the three. And many people, if you've ever gone to a screening for any of the films that I've done, like Another Slave Narrative, you'll often hear me say, look, I'm a Jackson because James Jackson Sr. owned a plantation in West Feliciana, Louisiana. He bought a woman who was born in Africa. He purchased her in Virginia. She had a son named James Jackson Jr., so she had a son with the man that she was enslaved by. And so she had children in the context of slavery. We don't know her name, but as I say, we know the name of her son, James Jackson Jr. James Jackson Jr. Had Elliot. Elliot had Solomon Neal Jackson I. Solomon Neal Jackson I had my grandfather, Solomon Neal Jackson II, who passed away in 2023. And then my grandfather had my father, Solomon Neal Jackson III, who, as I say, has transitioned on. And we think about him every day. And I think for anybody who might be listening who has experienced the loss of a parent, there is just nothing fucking like it, man. It's so painful. It's so hard. Um, but I will always remind myself that the pain is only an indicator of the love that was given and that was received. And my father gave, man. He was a man that loved. So let's just start with my dad. Solomon Neal Jackson III is awesome. He was born in New Orleans, and he was moved with his family to Los Angeles when he was 5. He graduated from Crenshaw High School. He went to school with Ice-T, which we all used to when we were kids. There are people today who will testify that that they've never heard my dad raise his voice. They have never seen my father get angry. That he had this equanimity about him that is enviable, but it's his love that is extraordinary. And one way, the best way, well, not the best way, but one way, because there's how do you describe your father in a phrase in a story? But one way to describe my father and to help illustrate the kind of man that he is through the story. And the story is my father is living in Bonita, California at the time of this story. And he's driving past the Bonita Mall. If anybody lives in San Diego, they know the Bonita Mall, or what used to be the Bonita Mall. And he sees this family, a Latino family, with their children, husband and wife, walking into the bushes. And he says to me, Michelle, I see that. And I say, what in the world? Because my dad used to always say that. What in the world? He says, what in the world? And he sees his family and he pulls over, asks what's going on. He finds out that's where they're living. They're living in the bushes, they're living in tents. And my father simply invites them to stay with him. And they do. And then they live with him for a time until they are able to get back on their feet and to be able to live on their own. And I don't know. There are so many people who have a similar story about my dad opening his home to them. If you go to, my sister and I, Denise and I created a Facebook page just to celebrate our father's life. And so many individuals would list how, Michelle, your father opened up his home to me. I didn't have anywhere to stay and he allowed me to stay there. And that's it. That's dad. He opened up his heart to people. He gave his heart to people. And sometimes that was in terms of a home for them to stay. Sometimes that was fixing their car. Sometimes that was fixing food. My father was from New Orleans. My father was a master home chef. Again, anyone who talks about my dad will talk about his gumbo and his shrimp and grits, which I've never had his shrimp and grits, but I have had his gumbo. And my taste buds are not always present because I think they hide when they see my father's gumbo coming my way. My father was known for his level of spice threshold. Um, and he was just known for his culinary skills, but he was known for his building skills. He was also a carpenter. He used to renovate homes. Um, he was my father is the kind of man that when I was moving from Brooklyn to Los Angeles to pursue film and TV writing, I called my dad and said, would you help me move from Brooklyn to Los Angeles? You help me drive. And my father's response is simply just tell me which airport I got to be at. And so in 2014, my father flew to Virginia to a military airport. I picked him up and we drove to New York. And then we drove from we drove from Brooklyn to Los Angeles in a few days. It should have taken a lot longer, but my father has a lead foot, and so do I. I inherited from my father, and we just sort of blew through the country. But that's, again, part of who my father is a man that just says, what do you need? And I'll make that happen for you. And I'll give my time to you. I'll give my money to you. I'll give my food to you. I'll give my home to you. But most importantly, I give my heart to you. If you met him, you would love him. Anybody who met him loved him. One thing I wanted to share with you was my dad's voice. I love my dad's voice. It's so manly, so masculine, so black, so New Orleans. Um, and I didn't, it didn't occur to me until last Tuesday, that it would have been helpful, could have been helpful No, it did occur to me. It did occur to me to record my father too. I'm a filmmaker. We put people in front of camera and get their stories. It did occur to me to do that for my dad. And my father passed away at 66, and I just thought we had more time. I've recorded a couple of um, stories of my dad talking about when he first met my mom, and I have a couple of stories about my father's perspective on the military and his experience in the military. Um, and then I have every voicemail that he's ever left me since 2014. So I thought one way just to share the voice of my dad with you, because it's such a beautiful voice, is just to play a message of him, of me not answering because I'm busy, because I'm a filmmaker and I'm always trying to do something. And I didn't answer my dad's call um, on this day, but I am grateful for his voice.
Hey, Biddy, how you doing? I was giving you a call. I just saw your text and everything, and I hope you're doing better than you were. If you get a chance, I would love to talk with you. Okay? I hope you feel better. All right, sweetie. Love you. And give me a call when you can. All right. Bye-bye.
I just express gratitude to you, Dad, for being my father and for the love that you are love. Thank you for love. Thank you for loving. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for loving our family. Thank you for loving your friends. Thank you for loving your church. Thank you for loving a family that's walking into the bushes and has nowhere to go. Thank you. So I dedicate this episode and this podcast to my dad, Solomon Neal Jackson III, who was the definition of Black philanthropy, Black people loving one another, Black people providing for one another. He's so awesome. You are listening to Black Philanthropy Our Stories, a Simuel and Marie podcast with new episodes released every Wednesday on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere you will find a podcast living its best life. You will find us there. Sometimes I do get asked about why I would spend so many resources on a podcast, whether it is energy resources or whether it's financial resources, and to do this podcast. Like you, I'm overscheduled. I've got work 12, 14-hour days, sometimes 7 days a week, all those sorts of things. And I want to spend more time with my family and my friends. The reason why I'm committed to adding Black Philanthropy, Our Stories, to my priorities is because ultimately I live my life through a lens as someone who descends from enslaved people. That celebrating Black professionals in philanthropy, but also African Americans in philanthropy, is really important because so many of our ancestors came to this country under a boat, and they came chained, and they had no rights. And some of our grandparents experienced Jim Crow. Some of our parents were born during Jim Crow while it was still in place. So to have a history of a community of individuals who, because of their race, were identified as non-human, inferior, worthy of ownership, that they could somehow then be someone like Darren Walker, who runs the Ford Foundation, is pretty amazing. That trajectory of dehumanization to then leadership that transforms lives. So I'm very proud to be a descendant of enslaved people. I'm very proud of Black people in philanthropy, and I'm especially proud of African Americans who descend from enslaved people who have found their way into philanthropy either as funders or as askers or everything in between. Maybe I am catching you on the treadmill. That's often where I like to listen to podcasts. Maybe I'm catching you in traffic. Maybe you are on your lunch break. And if you're taking a lunch today, congratulations. That is awesome. You are doing the right thing. And I hope that if you are taking a lunch break today, that you are taking the full allotted time, hopefully away from your desk, instead of what so many of us do is text and then voicemails and then emails and then a bite and then another text and then another voicemail and an email and then another bite. And then lo and behold, you go home pretty exhausted. You're going to go home exhausted anyway. The least you can do is replenish yourself with a good lunch. And so I hope you're having lunch. But if you're not having lunch and maybe you're walking your dog, that's okay too. But maybe you don't even like dogs, which is strange because dogs are awesome. But if you don't like dogs and you prefer cats, and you prefer cats so much that you walk your cat and people are looking at you as you go by and they're stopping and they're staring, that's because walking a cat is very strange. But it's a strange year. It's 2025 and it seems like everything and anything goes, including walking your cat on a leash. It's a safe space for you, no matter what you're up to today. One way for us to get started on our journey together on Black Philanthropy, our stories, is for me to share a little bit more about who I am and how I enter into the space of philanthropy, namely as a artist. When I started filmmaking in 2010, and by filmmaking I mean writing my first screenplay in 2010, like so many filmmakers who have the expectation that they're going to write their first screenplay, they're going to sell their first screenplay, and then life's just going to change. It did change, but it wasn't because I sold my first screenplay. And so, like so many filmmakers, I had to figure out, how do I write by night and then still have a day job that allows me to write by night? So some people become a waiter, some people work at Starbucks, some people become a nanny, some people do plan giving. And that's what I did. I did planned giving. I had never heard of fundraising before, philanthropy really, and definitely not planned giving. But I was working at Vassar College at the time after graduating from Harvard Divinity School on a fellowship at Vassar College. After my fellowship had ran out, I was looking for a job to get to the city, Manhattan in this case, in Brooklyn. And the first opportunity that I got was to work for the Episcopal Church Foundation in their plan giving and endowment management department. Okay, all big words that were new to me. After being at Episcopal Church Foundation in their plan giving and endowment management, I moved on to be an alumni director for a private school on the Upper East Side, which also included, of course, if you do alumni directing, you're also in the annual giving space. So I did that. And then I moved from New York to Los Angeles to pursue film and TV. And again, had to have that 9 to 5. And so the 9 to 5 that I had was major giving. Again, a new word for me, major giving, grant writing, all those sorts of things. And so, and since then, I still, even as I run my own company, Simuel and Murray, I still am on the fundraising side for our own projects that we do as filmmakers. So since 2011 to up until now, which is a span of about 14 years, I have been in the fundraising space primarily as an asker. In philanthropy, there are several ways to be a part of the sector. For many, that's on the funding side. And for others, it's on the asking and the receiving side. So I've been on the asking and the receiving side. And I'm really grateful for that. And I'll tell you, from 2011 to 2025, I did not meet another Black professional in philanthropy until I met Stephen Wallace, who you'll also meet on a later episode. He's so awesome. I didn't meet Stephen Wallace until maybe 2014-15, when I moved to Los Angeles and began in major giving. So there was a span about four to 5 years where I had not met any other Black people in philanthropy. I actually didn't find that being a Black female in this predominantly white space of philanthropy, I didn't find it strange. I didn't find it strange because I was used to predominantly white spaces. I grew up in a predominantly white space in California. I went to UCLA, I went to Princeton Seminary, I went to Harvard Divinity School, I worked at Vassar College. All of these places and these large institutions were predominantly white. So it wasn't foreign to me to be the only Black female in that space. What was foreign to me was the idea that I, as a Black female, belonged in this space, particularly as it related to philanthropy, because I didn't understand, I didn't know anything about philanthropy, or that even one could have a career in philanthropy. So when I only saw myself as the only Black face in philanthropy from 2011 to 2014, 15, I thought that I was an outlier. I thought that there was something unique about my position in the world, namely as a Black female in philanthropy. And it wasn't again until I met Stephen Wallace that I realized, oh, that there's actually one other Black man in this whole world of philanthropy. Fast forwarding to last year, 2024, I attended the Harvard Black Alumni Changemakers reunion that was so amazing. There were about 1,000 of us that were there from all the different schools from Harvard. And I was in this sea of beautiful Black Harvard joyfulness. And it was awesome to be around that. That was my first time having that experience, particularly in Harvard, in a very Black space that was in the context of Harvard. And because I'm a networker, and I make the best use of those, I think it's either Hova or Hoover apps that so many conferences use where you can see who all the attendees are. I went through that app for the reunion and I began to see that there were a number of alumni who were in philanthropy. And then, of course, because I'm a networker, then I go on LinkedIn and I want to see who knows who and if I know any of these people already. And I just began to see this whole world opening up regarding Black professionals in philanthropy. And as I'm going through LinkedIn, I'm noticing that a lot of these individuals know each other and that there's these communities that exist regarding Black philanthropy, whether it's Association for Black Foundation Executives and others. And I was just thinking, I felt like I was missing something. I just began to wonder how different my experience in philanthropy would have been over a span of 2011 to 2024, how different that experience would have been had I known more Black people. And the reason why that's important is because I had experiences as a professional within philanthropy that were particularly challenging related to my gender or to my race. In this case, I'll say to my race. And had I had other colleagues that I could have talked to about what was happening when I was interfacing with donors who may have made comments directed to race, would those experiences have been as painful? Would the experience of working in philanthropy as the only Black woman that I knew from 2011 to 2024, would it have been as lonely? So as I'm discovering this new world of Black professionals in philanthropy, I'm wondering in 2024 at this reunion, how can I contribute to this community? I'm not going to be a foundation president. I'm not a program officer. I'm not a full-time fundraiser for a nonprofit. I'm not a consultant for fundraising full-time. So what is it that I can do or how I can contribute? How can I contribute to this community? And what came to mind is that while I'm not a foundation president or a full-time fundraiser, what I am is a storyteller. And what I can do, how I can contribute to our community is through storytelling, because that's something that I do understand. That's something that I am a master at. So that is ultimately where Black philanthropy, our stories, comes from. It comes from a desire to want to contribute to the community of amazing Black people, namely through storytelling. Black Philanthropy, Our Stories is not the only podcast to address Black philanthropy. So there are some that spend an episode or two a year to talk about Black philanthropy, and there are others who speak about it more specifically. So there is room for all of us at the table. There are things that I and our guests can contribute to the conversation of philanthropy, particularly as Black people, particularly in 2025, that can be useful when it feels very much like the wild, wild west out there. And maybe there's an episode in 2023 that was done that needs to be redone in 2025 because the world is changing so quickly. Working in philanthropy is lonely. Even if you work at one of the largest foundations in the country and you've got a team of 50, or if you are the only person working for your organization, it can be lonely and it can be overwhelming and it can be confusing and it can be loving and it can be awesome. And ultimately, my desire for Black Philanthropy, Our Stories, is to remind you that you are not alone. I don't know how many people are going to listen to Black Philanthropy, Our Stories. It might just be you and me each week. And if it's just you and me each week, that is fine. You are worthy of this time. You are worth this time. But I am hoping that for all of those who are also listening, that they will, again, number one, know that you are not alone. And then number two, know, particularly if you are not already a part of this sector, that there might be opportunities for you to consider. My dream is that people in college, graduate school, maybe making a mid-career change, or if you just lost a federal job that was mission-driven and you're feeling pretty lost right now, my hope is that you will discover new opportunities within philanthropy where you can live your full self, that you can be mission-driven and transform lives in a way that is in line with your values and your dreams for yourself and for this country. It is also important to me that Black Philanthropy, Our Stories, is confirmation that Black people are not only the recipients of philanthropy, but are also in leadership. And just so we're all on the same page, Black communities, Black initiatives receive a very, very small percentage of the annual funds that are given through philanthropy each year. But somehow there's a perspective of we always have our hands out. We're not actually out there giving as well, either in organizations or out of our own pockets. And as many guests will remind you, Black people have been doing philanthropy since we were enslaved. That it is through Black philanthropy, us supporting one another, giving to one another, is how we have gotten here today. Black Philanthropy, Our Stories is essentially building the airplane while it's in the air. That is certainly one way to crash an airplane. That is also another way to create a very interesting, pliable airplane as well, which is the hope, is for the latter, not for the former. And that this is a space of hope. I am fully committed to you that whenever we get together for Black Philanthropy, Our Stories, that it is a time of kindness, a time of respect, a time of honesty, a time of courage, a time of asking hard questions, a time of having hard answers, a time of saying, you know what, I actually don't know. There is a lot of hopelessness and fear right now in 2025, and it's exhausting, and there's a lot of power in this sector of philanthropy. And so maybe my last hope is that Black Philanthropy, Our Stories provides just that hope, that things are going to get better should we choose to take those actions to make things better. Thank you again for taking the time to trust me with your time. I look forward to being with you on a weekly basis, and you matter and you count and you're really, really valuable.